Chapter 9. The Descent. The rain had finally ended. Not suddenly, not with the violence of a storm passing. Rather, it seemed to have exhausted itself. The clouds still hung low above the spiral city, drifting between towers like slow-moving ghosts. But the endless curtain of water had ceased. For the first time in days, sunlight touched the city. Weak sunlight, pale and uncertain. Yet enough to awaken silver reflections upon rooftops and bridges, enough to turn countless droplets into scattered stars. Velen stood upon the bridge of turning glass and watched the city below. The familiar rhythm had returned. Merchants unfolded canvas awnings over market stalls. Porters pushed carts across stone streets. Children raced along elevated walkways suspended between towers. The bells marked the passing hours. The clocks turned. The city breathed, yet something felt wrong. Not visibly, not dramatically. The change existed beneath the surface, like a crack hidden beneath paint. People smiled, but the smiles never lasted. Conversations flowed, then faltered. Laughter appeared, then disappeared. Eyes drifted upward toward the clock towers, toward the mechanisms, toward the sky itself, before quickly turning away. Everyone was pretending, and everyone knew it. The pulse had changed something. Not the city, the people. Velen continued across the bridge. The wind carried the scent of wet stone and machine oil. Far below, water still flowed through ancient channels carved into the foundations of the city. The sound mingled with the distant turning of gears. For most of his life he had found those sounds comforting. They meant the city was functioning. Stable, ordered, safe. Now they sounded different. Artificial. As though the city were forcing itself to continue a performance that no longer felt convincing. The thought unsettled him. By the time he reached the Hall of Clockmakers, the sunlight had already begun disappearing behind clouds once more. The great bronze doors stood partially open. Apprentices moved through the corridors carrying tools and journals. Voices echoed through stone passageways. Work continued. Routine continued. Everything continued. Yet beneath it all lingered an invisible tension, a shared uncertainty nobody wished to acknowledge. The hall felt less like a place of learning now, more like a place holding its breath. Velen climbed the spiral staircase leading toward the workshop. His footsteps echoed softly. The higher he climbed, the quieter the building became. The sounds of apprentices faded. The sounds of machinery faded, until only silence remained. When he finally reached Oren's workshop, he found the old clockmaker exactly where he had expected. Sitting beside the window, a cup of tea resting untouched upon the table. Watching the city. The sunlight illuminated floating dust motes drifting through the room. Old diagrams covered the walls, mechanical sketches, star charts, generations of accumulated observations. The room smelled faintly of paper, oil, and age. For a moment it appeared peaceful. Then Velen saw Oren's face. The old man had not slept. The realization struck immediately. The deep shadows beneath his eyes, the stiffness in his posture, the distant look that seemed fixed somewhere beyond the visible world. For the first time since meeting him, Oren looked old, truly old. Neither spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy, uncomfortable, filled with everything that remained unsaid. Finally, Velen broke it. "You knew." The words emerged quietly, yet they seemed louder than any accusation. Oren closed his eyes. Slowly. The movement carried no surprise, no denial, no defense, only exhaustion. For several moments the old clockmaker remained motionless. Then he exhaled softly. "Yes." The answer struck harder than anger would have. Harder than argument. Because it was honest. and honesty left nowhere to hide. I knew something was beneath the city. The old man's gaze remained fixed upon the window. I knew the pulse was real. Outside, a distant bell marked the passing hour. Measured, predictable, comforting. Yet suddenly, Velen found himself wondering whether that comfort had always been intentional. Whether the city had been designed to sound safe. Whether the clocks existed to mark time. Or to drown out something deeper. Something listening below. The thought sent a chill through him. What aren't you telling me? For the first time, Oren looked afraid. Not of Velen. Not of the order. But of the answer itself. And that was when he stood, slowly, carefully, as though carrying the weight of centuries upon his shoulders, and crossed the room toward the ancient shelves, toward the place where the true descent would begin. The shelves occupied the entire rear wall of the workshop. Velen had passed them thousands of times, perhaps tens of thousands. He had dusted them, repaired them, retrieved records from them. Yet standing before them now, they seemed somehow different, larger, older, as though they belonged to a room he had never truly seen before. Books filled every shelf, leather-bound journals, maintenance records, generations of observations, the accumulated memory of the Hall of Clockmakers. Dust rested upon their spines. The scent of old paper filled the air. Comforting, familiar, safe. Yet Oren paid them no attention. Instead, the old clockmaker reached toward a narrow section of shelving near the floor, a place so unremarkable that Velen doubted he had ever looked at it twice. Oren knelt slowly, his joints protesting softly. The movement carried a strange gravity, as though he had rehearsed it many times in his mind, yet hoped never to perform it again. For a moment he remained motionless, his hand resting upon the wood. Then he closed his eyes. Not in concentration, in remembrance. The workshop seemed unusually quiet. The clocks upon the walls continued their steady ticking, yet even they sounded distant, muted, respectful. Finally, Oren slipped his fingers between two shelves, far deeper than the gap should have allowed. A soft metallic click echoed from somewhere inside the wall. Velen straightened immediately. What was that? Oren did not answer. A second click followed, then a third. Ancient mechanisms awakening. The sound traveled through stone, through wood, through the very bones of the workshop. Dust drifted from the ceiling, tiny particles dancing through shafts of afternoon light. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the shelving began to move. Velen stared. The entire structure shifted away from the wall. Not much, only a few inches, yet enough. A thin line of darkness appeared behind it. Cold air emerged immediately. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The air carried a scent unlike anything in the workshop. Not paper, not oil, not machinery. Stone. Ancient stone. And something else. Rain. The smell reminded him of forgotten tunnels beneath the city, of places untouched by sunlight, of chambers abandoned long before his birth. The hidden opening widened further. The grinding of concealed mechanisms echoed softly through the room. Stone sliding against stone, wood shifting against ancient supports. A movement so slow it felt deliberate, ceremonial, until finally the passage revealed itself completely. Velen's breath caught. Beyond the shelves lay darkness. Not the darkness of night, not the darkness of an empty room. This darkness felt inhabited. Waiting. The narrow passage disappeared into blackness after only a few steps. Its stone walls seemed older than anything else within the hall. Older than the workshop, older than the city itself. For a long moment neither man moved. The opening stood before them. Silent, patient. Velen found himself unable to look away. Something about the passage felt familiar, not because he had seen it before, because he had dreamed it. A memory stirred. Silver threads, ancient stone, the distant sensation of something waiting below. His pulse quickened. The old clockmaker crossed to a hook beside the doorway and lifted an iron lantern. Its flame flared gently to life, warm gold pushing back the shadows, though not very far. The darkness beyond seemed strangely reluctant to retreat. Oren studied the passage for several moments, his expression unreadable. Then quietly, "I hoped this day would never come." The words hung heavily in the air. Velen turned toward him. "What is down there?" For the first time since opening the passage, Oren looked genuinely afraid. Not frightened for himself, frightened of the answer. The lantern trembled slightly within his hand. Its light danced across the stone walls, across symbols half hidden beneath centuries of dust, across the darkness waiting beyond. Then the old clockmaker finally spoke. "There are places beneath the city that do not appear on any map." The workshop seemed to shrink around them. "The Order knows of them." A pause. "The clockmakers guard them." Another. "But very few are ever permitted to enter." Velen stared into the darkness. Somewhere far below, beyond stone, beyond memory, beyond the turning clocks and crowded streets above, something stirred. And for the first time in his life, he felt himself standing at the edge of the city's oldest secret. The lantern light swayed gently as Oren stepped forward. Its golden glow rolled across the ancient stone passage. The darkness retreated, but only slightly, as though reluctant to surrender its secrets. For several moments, neither man spoke. The hidden doorway remained open behind them, a narrow rectangle of warm workshop light shining through the gloom. Velen glanced back. The familiar room appeared strangely distant now. The books, the diagrams, the clocks, the window overlooking the city. All of it suddenly felt fragile, small, as though the world above existed upon a thin layer of certainty stretched across something much deeper. Something older. Oren began descending. The stone steps spiraled downward around a hollow central shaft. Their surfaces had been worn smooth by countless generations of feet. Yet there was no dust, no debris, no signs of neglect. The staircase had been used. Recently, the realization unsettled him. "Who comes down here?" His voice echoed softly through the darkness. Oren's lantern illuminated another curve of descending stone. "The Order." The answer arrived without hesitation. "Only the Order?" A pause. "No." The old clockmaker continued downward. "Sometimes a keeper." The unfamiliar word lingered in the darkness. Velen frowned. "A keeper?" The lantern light danced across ancient carvings etched into the walls. Spirals, interlocking circles, symbols he did not recognize. For several moments Oren remained silent. Then quietly, "The title existed long before the Order." Another curve, another descent. The keepers came first. The words settled heavily into the darkness. The keepers, the same name that appeared in forgotten records, the same name connected to the pattern, the same name connected to the first question. The deeper they traveled, the colder the air became. The scent of stone grew stronger, damp, ancient, timeless. Somewhere water dripped rhythmically. The sound echoed through unseen chambers. Drop. Silence. Drop. Silence. The rhythm reminded him strangely of the pulse. The thought sent a chill through him. The staircase continued. Down, until Velen began losing all sense of distance. The city above felt impossibly far away now. Then something changed. The walls, the carved spirals surrounding them began to grow more complex. At first, the difference seemed subtle, then unmistakable. The symbols were no longer decorative. They formed patterns, vast interconnected designs spreading across the stone. Thread-like pathways, lines joining circles, circles joining spirals, spirals branching outward before returning to themselves. Velen slowed. The sight felt familiar, disturbingly familiar. His pulse quickened. Because he had seen these shapes before. Not here. Within the Chamber of Echoes. Within his dreams. Within the silver web. He reached out instinctively. His fingertips brushed the stone. The moment they made contact, the pulse echoed. Not through the city, not beneath the ground. Through him. A vibration. A recognition. Gone almost immediately. Yet powerful enough to steal his breath. Oren stopped. The old clockmaker did not turn around. Yet somehow he knew. You felt it. The words barely rose above a whisper. For a long moment neither moved. Far below them, something stirred. And deeper within the darkness, the staircase continued. The silence lingered after Oren's words. You felt it. The old clockmaker remained standing several steps below. The lantern hung motionless in his hand. Its amber glow illuminated only a small circle of stone. Beyond that, darkness claimed everything. Velen slowly withdrew his hand from the wall. The sensation had already faded, yet he could still remember it. Not the feeling itself, the recognition, as though something hidden within the stone had briefly acknowledged his presence. Neither man spoke. The staircase continued spiraling downward beneath them. Ancient, patient, waiting. Eventually, Oren resumed walking. The sound of his boots echoed softly against the stone, a slow measured rhythm. The rhythm of a man who had walked this path before. Velen followed. Questions crowded his thoughts. Too many questions. Not enough answers. The symbols continued appearing upon the walls. Some were spirals. Some resembled branching pathways. Others looked strangely like woven threads crossing and intertwining before disappearing into larger designs. The deeper they descended, the more frequently those symbols appeared. At last Velen pointed toward one. What do they mean? Oren glanced toward the carving. For a moment his expression softened. Not with fear, with memory. They are older than the city. His lantern illuminated the design. Interwoven lines curved around a central spiral. The pattern appeared almost alive. They were carved by those who came before. Before the clockmakers? Oren nodded. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. A sad smile, the kind carried by old memories. Long before. The staircase curved again. The darkness seemed to deepen. For several moments Oren said nothing further. Then quietly, the first clockmakers never called themselves clockmakers. The keepers preserved knowledge. The lantern light passed across another ancient carving. The weavers preserved balance. The symbols seemed different now. No longer decorations. No longer history. Evidence. They understood the pattern. A pause. Not completely. Another. No one ever understood it completely. The old clockmaker's voice lowered, almost reverently. But they listened to it. The words echoed softly through the stairwell. Listened. The chamber had been built to listen. The pattern responded. The pulse answered. Pieces of the puzzle began shifting within Velen's thoughts. The chamber, Oren nodded before he could finish, was theirs. Velen stopped walking. The revelation struck harder than he expected. The Chamber of Echoes, the heart of the city, the place the Order guarded, the place where the Eye had appeared. Not built by clockmakers, built by weavers. Far above them, the city continued its endless turning. Unaware, below the darkness waited. The Order knows this? Oren hesitated. Some do. Not all. The answer unsettled him more than certainty would have. The staircase widened suddenly. The walls began opening outward. The confined shaft gave way to a broader passage. Ancient pillars emerged from the darkness, their surfaces covered in the same woven symbols. Velen's breath caught. Ahead, Something enormous waited beyond the reach of the lantern. Not a room, a hall, a forgotten hall. The air felt different here. Still, sacred, untouched by centuries. Oren stopped at the threshold. For several moments, he simply stared into the darkness ahead. Then quietly, "This is where the weavers came to listen." The lantern flame flickered. Somewhere deep within the unseen darkness, something answered. Not a voice, not a sound. A pulse, and for the first time since entering the hidden passage, Velen felt it echo through the ancient hall itself. For a long moment, neither man moved. The forgotten hall stretched away before them. Silent, immense, ancient beyond comprehension. Velen had seen great chambers before. The Hall of Clockmakers, the Chamber of Echoes, the hidden sanctuaries of the Order. None of them had prepared him for this. The scale alone felt impossible. The nearest pillars rose higher than any tower room within the city above. Their surfaces vanished into darkness far overhead. The lantern's glow reached only a fraction of their height before surrendering to shadow. Every column was covered in carvings. Not words, not records, patterns. Thousands upon thousands of interwoven lines, spirals crossing spirals, threads joining threads, endless pathways twisting through stone. The designs appeared almost alive. Velen found his eyes following them instinctively, one line becoming another, one pattern leading into the next. The longer he looked, the more difficult it became to determine where any single thread began or ended. It was as though the entire hall had been carved from a single continuous design, a single thought, a single movement. The realization sent a chill through him. This wasn't built. The words escaped before he could stop them. Oren glanced toward him. No. The answer surprised him. The old clockmaker slowly raised the lantern. Its golden light swept across the hall, across pillars, across floor, across carvings untouched for centuries. It was grown. Silence followed. Velen stared. The answer made no sense. And yet, standing here, it somehow felt true. The hall did not resemble architecture. It resembled a pattern that had become stone, as though the builders had not imposed their design upon the world. They had discovered it, and revealed what already existed beneath the surface. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform. Unlike the dark stone surrounding it, the platform appeared pale silver, almost luminous. Ancient symbols radiated outward from its center. Concentric circles, spirals, interwoven pathways. The same designs appeared throughout the city, the same designs hidden within the Chamber of Echoes, the same designs Velen had seen within his dreams. The sight stole his breath. Oren seemed unsurprised. They all began here. His voice echoed softly through the hall. The chamber. A pause. The towers. Another. The clocks. The lantern light trembled slightly. The city itself slowly turned. For the first time he understood. The spiral city was not separate from this place. It was descended from it. A memory built upon a memory. A shadow cast by something far older, far grander, and far less understood. Then the pulse echoed. Deep, ancient, patient. The vibration traveled through the floor beneath their feet. The circular platform responded immediately. A faint silver light appeared within the carvings. One line, then another, then dozens. The symbols slowly awakened. Velen froze. Oren lowered the lantern. For the first time since entering the hall, the old clockmaker looked afraid. Because this had never happened before, and somewhere beneath the forgotten hall, beneath the city, beneath the pattern itself, something had begun listening again. The silver light continued spreading across the platform, slowly, patiently, like dawn creeping across a sleeping world. Neither man moved. The ancient carvings beneath the stone floor shimmered with pale radiance. Spirals awakened first, then circles, then pathways hidden within pathways, each line illuminating in sequence, each symbol revealing another buried beneath it. as though the platform contained far more than either of them had ever imagined. The light traveled outward from the center, one thread becoming 10, 10 becoming hundreds, hundreds becoming thousands. Silver veins spread through the ancient stone, flowing beneath the surface like liquid starlight. The forgotten hall seemed to breathe. The towering pillars surrounding them disappeared into darkness above. Their carved surfaces flickered with reflected light, ancient patterns shifting between shadow and silver glow. For a moment, Velen found himself imagining movement there. Not real movement, the illusion of movement, as though the carvings remembered something. The air felt different now, heavier, charged, filled with an invisible pressure. The silence deepened. Even the distant sound of dripping water had vanished. No echoes, no footsteps, no distant settling of stone, only stillness. The entire hall seemed to be listening. Velen became aware of every breath he took, every beat of his heart, every tiny movement of the lantern flame. The sounds felt unnaturally loud within the vast chamber. The platform brightened. A low vibration traveled upward through the floor, through his boots, through his legs, through his chest. Not pain, not sound, recognition. The sensation struck him immediately. The same feeling he had experienced within the Chamber of Echoes. The same feeling hidden within the pulse. The same impossible familiarity buried within dreams that vanished upon waking. Recognition. The word appeared within his thoughts. Clear, distinct, recognition. Again, the silver light rippled outward. The symbols pulsed. The air above the platform began to distort. Orin stiffened. The old clockmaker's grip tightened around the lantern. Its flame trembled. "What is it?" Velen whispered. Orin did not answer. His eyes remained fixed upon the center of the platform. Something was happening. The air itself seemed to be changing. At first Velen thought it was mist, then light, then neither. Thin strands emerged from the glowing platform. Silver, luminous, weightless. They rose silently into the darkness. One strand, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. The strands drifted upward like threads suspended within water, crossing, separating, returning, joining, weaving. The sight stole his breath. The movements possessed an impossible elegance. No hesitation, no uncertainty, no wasted motion. Every thread appeared to know exactly where it belonged. The silver strands twisted around one another, building something, not randomly, not mechanically, purposefully. Velen could not explain why, but the sight filled him with an overwhelming sense of familiarity. Not because he understood it, because some forgotten part of him recognized it. The threads continued gathering. The structure slowly emerged. Vast, ancient, impossible. At first he could not understand what he was seeing. The shape existed only in fragments, pieces of a larger whole, a suggestion rather than a complete image. Then suddenly, he understood. A loom, not a loom of wood, not a loom crafted by human hands. Something far older, far larger, a pattern through which reality itself seemed woven. Its silver framework stretched beyond the limits of sight, vanishing into darkness overhead, disappearing into distances the hall could not possibly contain. The image flickered constantly, appearing, vanishing, returning, as though reality struggled to hold it together. Orin took an involuntary step backwards. No, the word escaped him as little more than a breath. Not fear, recognition, the same recognition Velen felt. The same impossible certainty that they were witnessing something ancient beyond understanding. The silver threads shimmered one final time. The vast image trembled, then collapsed. Gone. The threads vanished. The glow faded. The air settled. Darkness returned to the forgotten hall. Only the lantern remained. The pillars, the carvings, the silence. For several moments neither man moved. Neither spoke. Neither seemed capable of speech. Then quietly, almost to himself, Orin whispered, "The stories were true." Velen turned toward him. What stories? The old clockmaker continued staring at the now dark platform. His face had become pale beneath the lantern light. The stories about the first weavers, far below the forgotten hall, beneath the foundations of the city, beneath the oldest chambers, beneath memory itself. The pulse echoed once more, deep, ancient, patient. And this time, for the briefest moment, it sounded almost like an answer. The loom vanished, yet the hall did not return to what it had been before. Something remained. Not light, not sound, not movement, a presence. The vast chamber seemed altered in some subtle, impossible way, as though reality itself had shifted slightly out of alignment, as though an unseen door had opened somewhere beyond sight and had failed to close completely. The towering pillars remained motionless. Ancient spirals climbed their surfaces before disappearing into darkness far above. Silver reflections shimmered faintly across polished stone. Dust drifted through the lantern glow like tiny floating stars, yet everything felt different. The silence itself had changed. It no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. Velen found himself staring at the place where the loom had appeared, his eyes searching the darkness, searching for lingering threads, searching for movement, searching for proof that he had not imagined what he had seen. The darkness offered nothing, only stillness, only the vast weight of forgotten centuries. For the first time since entering the hall, Velen became truly aware of its age. Not centuries, not thousands of years, older. The certainty arrived without explanation. No evidence, no logic, no reason. Simply knowing, the hall felt less like a structure and more like a fossil, a preserved imprint left behind by something so ancient that history itself could no longer remember its name. The thought sent a chill through him. His gaze wandered across the endless carvings, across the spirals, across the interwoven pathways, across patterns that seemed to repeat at every scale. The same shapes appeared within larger shapes, the same pathways hidden inside other pathways, as though the entire hall had been carved from a single idea, a single thought frozen within stone. Nearby, Oren remained motionless. The old clockmaker stood with the lantern hanging forgotten in his hand. Its warm golden flame flickered softly. The light cast long shadows across his face. For several moments he appeared unable to speak, unable to move, unable to look away from the darkened platform. Then finally, "I never believed it." His voice barely rose above a whisper. Velen turned toward him. "What?" Oren swallowed. His eyes never left the platform. The stories. A pause. The old records. Another. The warnings. His expression darkened. "When I was an apprentice, they told us these things were metaphors." The lantern flame trembled. Stories meant to teach caution. His voice grew quieter. Not history. Silence settled once more. Far above them, beyond countless layers of stone and forgotten tunnels, the spiral city continued its endless turning. Bridges carried travelers between towers. Markets bustled with merchants and voices. Clockmakers tended mechanisms. Children crossed rain-soaked streets. Life continued. Unaware. Entirely unaware. The realization struck Velen with surprising force. Everything above existed because of this place. The towers, the clocks, the chamber of echoes, the order. All of it descended from something buried beneath the city. Something forgotten, something ancient. And now it was waking. What was it? The question escaped before he could stop it. Oren closed his eyes. For a moment he seemed impossibly old. When he finally answered, his voice carried a weight Velen had never heard before. "The first pattern." The words echoed softly through the hall. "The shape from which all others emerged." Velen frowned. "I don't understand." A faint smile touched Oren's face. Sad. Tired. Knowing. No. His eyes drifted upward, toward the darkness where the loom had appeared. "Neither do I." The honesty startled him. Oren always seemed to know, always seemed to understand, always seemed one step ahead of everyone else. Yet standing here, deep beneath the city, even he appeared lost. The platform remained dark, silent, still. For a moment Velen thought whatever had happened was over. Then something caught his eye. A single silver line, faint, almost invisible. It glowed beneath the surface of the platform. He stepped closer. The line brightened. Slowly, like an ember awakening beneath ash, the silver thread stretched outward from the center of the platform, across the carvings, across the spirals, across the ancient stone. Velen watched in silence. Then another line appeared, and another, and another. Silver pathways awakened one by one. The floor itself seemed to illuminate, not randomly, purposefully. The glowing lines connected, separated, rejoined, a route, a pathway, a guide, leading somewhere. The silver threads continued spreading deeper into the forgotten hall, toward darkness untouched by lantern light, toward chambers unseen for generations, toward places even memory had abandoned. Oren saw them. Immediately the color drained from his face. No. The word escaped him before he could stop it. Not fear. Recognition. The kind of recognition reserved for things one hopes never to witness. "What is it?" Velen asked. For several moments the old clockmaker could not answer. His eyes remained fixed upon the glowing pathway. Then finally, there was supposed to be no path. The silver lines continued awakening, slowly, patiently, relentlessly, extending deeper into the darkness, leading toward something hidden, something waiting, something forgotten. And somewhere far below the foundations of the spiral city, beneath the Weaver Hall, beneath the pulse itself, something stirred in answer, as though it had been waiting for this moment all along. The silver pathway continued spreading across the floor, slowly, patiently, relentlessly, like roots awakening beneath frozen earth. The luminous lines flowed through the ancient stone, crossing spirals, passing beneath forgotten symbols, following roots hidden within the carvings themselves. The light moved with purpose. No hesitation, no uncertainty, no searching. It knew exactly where it was going. The realization unsettled Velen more than he cared to admit. The pathway stretched away from the Weaver platform, across the vast hall, across polished stone untouched for centuries, toward darkness beyond the reach of the lantern, toward somewhere. The immense chamber remained silent around them. Towering pillars vanished into shadow overhead. Their surfaces were covered in countless interwoven carvings, spirals nested within spirals, pathways hidden within pathways, ancient designs repeating endlessly at every scale. Dust drifted through pale shafts of silver light, suspended motionless in the still air. The hall felt impossibly old, not abandoned. Waiting, the sensation settled over him with increasing certainty. The forgotten hall was not dead. It had been dormant, and now something was waking it. Beside him, Oren remained motionless. The lantern hung from his hand. Its warm golden flame seemed strangely fragile against the immense darkness surrounding them. The old clockmaker stared at the glowing pathway. His face appeared pale, his expression troubled. For a long time he said nothing. Then finally, "It should not exist." The words echoed softly through the hall. Velen turned. "What should not exist?" "The path." The answer came immediately. Oren's eyes never left the silver lines. "The records speak of it." A pause, but only as a warning. The lantern flame flickered. For a moment the shadows upon the pillars seemed to shift. The final route. The words settled heavily into the silence. The final route. Even the name felt ancient. Dangerous, as though it belonged to a language older than the city itself. Velen looked back toward the glowing pathway. The silver threads continued extending deeper into the darkness, disappearing between colossal pillars, vanishing into regions of the hall untouched by light. What happened there? His voice sounded smaller than he intended. Oren hesitated. For the first time since Velen had known him, the old clockmaker seemed genuinely uncertain. No one knows. The answer hung between them. Some records claim the last weavers left this world. A pause. Others claim they crossed a threshold. Others say they simply vanished. The hall suddenly felt colder. The pathway brightened. One distant pillar reflected the glow. Then another. Then another. Silver light traveled outward through the forgotten hall, awakening carvings hidden within the stone, revealing patterns that had not been seen for generations. The chamber itself seemed to respond, as though ancient memories were surfacing, as though the hall remembered. The pulse echoed. Deep, ancient, patient. Velen felt it through the floor beneath his boots. The vibration traveled through the stone, through the pillars, through the glowing pathway, then through him. The sensation was impossible to describe. Not pain, not sound, recognition. The same feeling he had experienced within the Chamber of Echoes. The same feeling he had felt when touching the ancient carvings. The same feeling hidden within dreams that dissolved each morning before he could remember them. Recognition. The pathway pulsed. The silver threads brightened. For a brief moment, the glowing lines resembled veins carrying light through the body of the hall itself. A nervous system awakening after a very long sleep. Oren saw it too. His grip tightened around the lantern. "We should leave." The words sounded uncertain, even to him. The old clockmaker continued staring into the darkness. Unable to look away, the pathway brightened again. Far ahead, somewhere beyond sight, something answered. Not a voice, not a sound, a light, tiny, faint, almost invisible, yet unmistakably there, waiting at the end of the path. Velen felt his breath catch. The distant glow flickered once. Then again, like a signal, like a beacon, like an invitation. The forgotten hall seemed to hold its breath. The pillars stood silent. The pathway shone. The pulse echoed beneath the world. And for reasons he could not explain, Velen knew with absolute certainty that whatever waited beyond the darkness had been expecting them. The distant light flickered once more. Tiny, distant, almost swallowed by the immense darkness surrounding it. Yet now that Velen had seen it, he found it impossible to look away. The beacon seemed insignificant against the vastness of the forgotten hall. A single point of silver light, a lone star suspended within an ocean of shadow. And yet somehow, it dominated everything. The silver pathway stretched between them and the distant glow. A luminous thread woven through the heart of the hall, crossing polished black stone, passing between colossal pillars, disappearing into regions untouched by lantern light for countless generations. The route felt ancient, not abandoned, waiting for footsteps, waiting for movement, waiting for someone to walk it once more. The thought settled heavily inside him. Around them, the hall remained silent. Towering pillars vanished into darkness beyond sight. Ancient spirals wound endlessly across their surfaces. Interwoven pathways crossed and recrossed one another in designs too vast to fully comprehend. Dust drifted through shafts of pale silver light, suspended motionless in the still air. The chamber felt impossibly old. Older than the spiral city, older than the clockmakers, older than the order, perhaps older than memory itself. Beside him, Oren remained motionless. The old clockmaker's face appeared pale beneath the lantern glow. Deep lines etched his weathered features. His eyes reflected the silver pathway stretching into darkness. For a long time he said nothing, then slowly shook his head. No. The word echoed softly through the immense chamber. No one has followed that route for generations. His voice sounded strained, as though speaking aloud a fear long buried, a fear passed down through countless generations of clockmakers. The records were clear. The lantern trembled slightly within his hand. It was sealed. Velen continued staring toward the distant beacon. Why? The question seemed to vanish into the vastness surrounding them. For several moments, Oren remained silent. The forgotten hall seemed to listen. The pillars stood motionless. The silver pathway glowed. The pulse echoed beneath the floor. Finally, because something changed, the answer came little more than a whisper. The final weavers discovered something. A pause. Something they were never meant to find. The words settled heavily into the darkness. The distant light flickered again. Velen felt the pulse beneath his feet. Slow, ancient, patient, like a heartbeat buried beneath the foundations of the world. The vibration traveled through the stone, through the pillars, through the pathway. For a brief moment, the entire hall seemed connected. Platform, pathway, pillars, beacon. One system, one design, one thought stretching across unimaginable distances. The sensation made the hairs rise along his arms. Without fully realizing what he was doing, Velen stepped forward. The moment his boot touched the glowing pathway, the hall responded. Silver light surged beneath his feet. A ripple raced away from him, flowing along the luminous route, spreading between pillars, crossing ancient symbols, traveling deeper into darkness. The reaction was immediate. The distant beacon brightened. Not dramatically, not enough for certainty, but enough. Enough to remove all doubt. The hall had answered him. Oren saw it. The old clockmaker inhaled sharply. For the first time since entering the forgotten hall, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. "It knows you're here." The words settled heavily into the silence. Velen turned slowly. "What knows?" Oren's gaze remained fixed upon the distant light. For several moments he seemed unable to answer. Then quietly, "I don't think the weavers were listening." The lantern flame flickered. The pulse echoed. The pathway brightened. Far beyond the reach of sight, the beacon answered once more, as though agreeing. A chill traveled through Velen, because for the first time since entering the forgotten hall, a possibility occurred to him. What if the weavers had not built this place? What if they had discovered it? The thought arrived suddenly, complete, terrifying. The pillars, the platform, the pulse, the loom. None of it felt constructed. None of it felt invented. It felt uncovered, as though something impossibly ancient had always existed beneath the world. Hidden beneath stone, hidden beneath history, hidden beneath memory, waiting patiently for someone to notice. The beacon brightened again. A little stronger this time, a little closer. And from somewhere far beyond the reach of sight, a new sound emerged. Not a voice, not footsteps, not machinery, movement. Soft, slow, ancient, like stone shifting after an age of silence, like something turning within the darkness. The sound traveled through the hall, echoing between the colossal pillars, passing through forgotten chambers, awakening memories hidden within the stone. The entire chamber seemed to exhale. The silver pathway pulsed. The beacon glowed. The pulse echoed beneath the world. And somewhere beyond the darkness, something moved. Something that had been waiting. Something that now knew they were coming. For a long moment, neither man moved. The beacon glowed in the distance. Tiny, distant, almost invisible. Yet now it seemed brighter than before. Not because its light had changed, because Velen could feel it. The sensation lingered somewhere beyond thought, beyond reason, beyond understanding, like a memory he had forgotten long ago. The silver pathway stretched before them, its pale light flowing through the floor of the forgotten hall, crossing ancient symbols, passing between towering pillars, disappearing into darkness untouched by lantern light. The route seemed impossibly old, as though countless footsteps had once traveled it, and then suddenly stopped. The silence surrounding them felt deeper now. The vast chamber no longer felt abandoned. It felt attentive, watching, waiting. The pillars rose into darkness beyond sight. Their carved surfaces shimmered faintly beneath the silver glow. Thousands upon thousands of interwoven pathways crossed the stone. Spirals nested within spirals. Threads within threads, patterns repeating endlessly at every scale. The longer Velen looked, the more difficult it became to distinguish the carvings from the pathway itself. Everything appeared connected, part of one design, part of one thought. The realization unsettled him. Because the hall no longer resembled something built. It resembled something remembered. Beside him, Oren remained motionless. The old clockmaker stared toward the distant beacon. The lantern trembled slightly in his hand. Its warm golden light seemed fragile against the vast silver glow surrounding them. For the first time since entering the forgotten hall, Velen thought Oren looked tired. Not physically, ancient, as though the weight of every forgotten story and every buried secret had suddenly settled upon his shoulders. "We should leave." The words sounded weaker than before. Even Oren no longer seemed convinced by them. The beacon flickered. Once. Twice. The distant light reflected across the polished floor. The silver pathway brightened. Velen took a slow breath, then stepped forward. The response was immediate. Silver light surged beneath his feet. The pathway awakened. A ripple of illumination raced away from him, flowing through spirals, crossing symbols, traveling deeper into the darkness ahead. The hall responded. Not with sound, not with movement. Recognition. The sensation washed through him instantly, like placing a hand upon an ancient mechanism and feeling it turn for the first time in centuries. The pillars seemed brighter, the carvings clearer, the distant beacon stronger. The forgotten hall knew he had chosen. Behind him, Oren closed his eyes. For a moment the old clockmaker said nothing. Then quietly, "So it begins." The words echoed softly through the chamber. Velen looked back. "What begins?" Oren's expression darkened. For several moments he seemed unsure whether to answer. Then finally, "The same journey." The pulse echoed beneath the floor. Deep, ancient, patient. The vibration traveled through the pathway, through the pillars, through the stone. The journey the last weavers took. The hall suddenly felt colder. The distant beacon brightened. Far ahead, between pillars older than memory, something shifted. A shadow, gone almost immediately, yet unmistakably there. Velen froze. The darkness settled once more. Silent, still, watching, neither man spoke. The forgotten hall stretched endlessly before them. The silver route continued into the unknown. The beacon waited, and somewhere ahead, beyond sight, beyond memory, beyond the limits of the city above, the path was leading them toward the oldest secret in the world. For the first time in countless generations, someone was walking the final route again. The doorway stood before them, immense, silent, ancient beyond comprehension. For a long moment neither man moved. The final stretch of the silver pathway ended at its base, the luminous route that had led them across the forgotten hall. Past awakening pillars, past memories hidden within stone, past the ghosts of forgotten weavers preserved within ancient carvings. Everything had led here. The doorway towered high above them, so vast that its upper edges vanished into darkness beyond the reach of sight. Its surface was carved directly into the black stone of the hall itself, not assembled, not constructed, discovered. The thought arrived uninvited. The immense circular structure resembled less a door and more a pattern that had become stone. A shape hidden within the world long before anyone knew to search for it. Its surface was covered in spirals, thousands upon thousands of them, threads crossing threads, pathways joining pathways. Endless interwoven designs flowing across the stone in impossible complexity. The longer Velen stared, the more difficult it became to determine where any single line began or ended. The entire doorway appeared carved from a single continuous movement, a single thought, a single intention. The sight unsettled him. The silver pathway beneath his feet brightened. Instantly the doorway responded. Hidden lines awakened within the stone. Silver radiance flowed through ancient carvings, passing through spirals, crossing pathways, illuminating symbols unseen for countless generations. The entire structure seemed to inhale. The hall fell silent. Not merely quiet, silent, the kind of silence that existed before sound. The towering pillars stood motionless. Dust drifted through pale shafts of silver light. Even the air itself felt still, waiting. Listening, watching. The pulse echoed. Deep, ancient, patient. The vibration traveled through the stone beneath their feet, through the pillars, through the pathway, through the doorway itself. The immense circular structure began to hum, softly, almost gently, like a memory returning after a very long absence. Beside him, Oren stared upward. The lantern hung forgotten at his side. Its golden flame appeared insignificant beside the growing silver glow. For the first time since Velen had known him, the old clockmaker looked truly afraid. Not afraid of danger, afraid of understanding. The records were wrong. His voice barely rose above a whisper. Velen looked toward him. "What do you mean?" Oren continued staring at the awakening doorway. His expression distant, lost somewhere between memory and realization. "We believed the weavers disappeared." A pause. "We believed they left." Another. "We believed they failed." The pulse echoed again. The doorway trembled. Silver light spread through the spirals. Oren swallowed. "I don't think any of those things are true." The words seemed to hang within the chamber. Heavy, unavoidable. The immense doorway began to separate. A thin line of silver light appeared between the ancient stone. Velen felt his breath catch. The opening widened, slowly, relentlessly, like an ancient mechanism fulfilling a purpose set in motion long ago. The sensation was unsettling. Not because the doorway was opening, because it felt expected, as though the hall had always known this moment would come, as though the final route had always led here, as though someone had been waiting. The opening widened further. Silver light spilled into the hall. Not harsh, not blinding, soft, warm, almost familiar. The glow touched the pillars, the carvings, the pathway, and everywhere it touched, the ancient stone seemed to awaken. The feeling struck him immediately. Recognition. The same feeling hidden within the chamber of echoes. The same feeling beneath the pulse. The same feeling that had followed him through dreams he could never quite remember. Recognition. The doorway did not feel foreign. It felt known, as though part of him had always been moving toward this place. Always. The opening widened further. Beyond it there was no chamber. No machinery. No archive. No forgotten city. Only light. Endless silver light stretching beyond sight. Vast. Silent. Infinite. The sight stole every thought from his mind. It did not resemble a place. It resembled possibility. A horizon beyond history. A horizon beyond memory. A horizon beyond the world itself. Beside him, Orin took an involuntary step backward. His eyes widened, because he understood something Velen did not. Something hidden within the oldest records. Something forgotten even by the clockmakers. The old man stared into the silver horizon, and for the first time, he looked small. Far beyond the threshold, something moved. A distant shape, too far away to identify, too vast to comprehend. Its silhouette shifted within the silver light, like a mountain walking across the horizon, like a continent turning in its sleep. The scale of it defied understanding, yet there was no mistaking its presence. It was there, waiting. The pulse echoed once more, deep beneath the world. The silver horizon brightened. The distant shape slowed, then stopped. For a single impossible moment, it turned, and Velen felt it. Not saw, felt. Awareness, the unmistakable sensation of being noticed. The ancient hall held its breath. The doorway stood open. The silver horizon stretched into infinity, and somewhere beyond the threshold, something looked back.